Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lori Boucher with Painted Heart Market. One of my favorite projects are Christmas decorations, and in this video, I'm going to begin the process of making a Merry Christmas sign. It's a tall vertical sign you might put out by your door or by your hearth. There's actually 4 videos in this series. You can find them all on YouTube, or you can visit my website, paintedheartmarket.com, to see all the videos, as well as purchase the stencils with detailed instructions that are included on this video. Thanks again for joining me, and let's get started. Today I'm starting a great project to create a beautiful sign. It'll go outside my front door over Christmas. It's just going to be like a very long, tall, vertical sign that says Merry Christmas. I'm using a process today with stencils, and I'm using a rustic paint method that's going to make it look like kind of an old weathered store sign. So I'm going to go ahead and start this first part. You can see that I have my board, and the instructions will also be posted on my site for the size of the board. And the first thing I'm doing is base coating it white. We'll be using a couple of different layers of paint in this process. As you can see, I'm just using a smooth roller and just getting a good coverage of the paint. Ultimately, this part of the process is going to make my white lettering. My sign is actually going to be red with some weathering appearance. But what this process does is it allows you to have really sharp stenciled letters, which you'll see why in just a few minutes. And it also makes this look like an item that maybe you picked up at an antique market, a vintage sign that would have been outside a Christmas tree stand or maybe just a holiday shop, and it's been painted a couple of times. So we want it to look like we had a couple of different layers of paint on it. So you can see I'm just smoothing it out the whole length of the board, getting that white paint all nice and even. And it looks like, based on what I'm seeing, I'm going to need to go back over the white one more time and put one more coat on. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this coating of paint is drying, and then I'll come back. Now my board is nice and dry. You can see I've painted the entire board. I do want to point out that I didn't paint the side or the back of the board. I have a very specific reason. I actually like to use my signs for more than one holiday. So I just paint for the holiday on one side, and then later I'll go back and do another holiday. So for instance, this side may say Merry Christmas, but the back side may say Happy Fall. I'm getting ready to start the stenciling process, and I wanted to show you the stencils that I'm going to be using. Now these are stencils that I just cut out on my silhouette, and I've got a couple of different kinds. I'm going to bring them into the frame here. You can cut these out on your silhouette also if you have one. Or if I do sell these on my website, so just let me know if you'd like one. And I have 3 or actually 4 different stencils and 2 different processes that I'm using. So this very long stencil, which is actually about 60 inches long, says Christmas. And you can see that I have a white backing here. I have transfer tape, which is just silhouette cutting, vinyl cutting top for sticky paper. And then under it, I have these blue letters that are actually cut out of stencil material. I have that style for Christmas, and I have that style for Merry. I have 2 other stencils that I'm using, and they're actually Christmas trees. Like I said, I want this to kind of look like a sign that used to be at a roadside Christmas tree stand. So I'm going to actually apply the Christmas trees at the very bottom and up towards the top of my sign, and that'll actually be done in green. Now, if you notice the different styles, on the word Christmas, I'm going to use these stencil letters to block the red paint that I'm going to put on last from getting through to my letters. So it'll keep my letters nice and white. When I get ready to do the Christmas trees, I will have painted everything red, and I'll go back through, and you notice that now I've got the blue stencil material around, and where there's an opening, I'm going to put green paint. So I'll have my nice little row of green Christmas trees across there. So I'm going to pause for just a moment in the video, get my stencil all stretched out here, and then I'll show you how to apply it to your board. Now, before we apply this first stencil to our white board, I need to go through and use a process called burnishing. And you can use your finger, you can use like a tongue depressor, you can actually buy a Silhouette tool that burnishes. Really, it's just about rubbing this outline of the blue letter, which is the stencil where we're going to block the paint. It's just rubbing it so that it sticks well to this sticky clear transfer tape, and that'll allow us to seamlessly apply it to our sign. So I'm just going to pause the video as I continue to rub these letters all the way up, and then just a second I'll show you how to remove the transfer tape. So now I have completed the process of burnishing all of my letters, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing. I'm going to flip it over. This is a really long stencil, and I just want to make sure that I don't get it really pulled or stuck on each other. It's kind of like working with a lot of vinyl, sticky, maybe fly paper or something. You can really get into a mess in a hurry. And if you notice as I'm rolling along, every once in a while I'm pulling my backing off, and I see that letter like right here start to come up. I just touch it with my finger and kind of put it back down. Also, if you notice as I'm pulling the backing off, I'm pulling across the design. I'm not pulling up. I'm not lifting my paper up. I'm moving my paper across. And that'll make a huge difference in you being successful in pulling off all of these letters. So I'm going to just let you continue to watch me do this. It is something that takes just a little bit of getting used to. That one wants to be just a little pesty right there. But these are really big chunky letters. It's actually a pretty good project to try. Sometimes if I'm transferring, I have my stencil the opposite way so that I'm pulling it off a different direction. But this one, I was a little worried about it getting tangled, so I wanted to keep it flat, the sticky pieces flat. So there I got a little more. If I kind of come at an angle there, it leaves that one a little crisper. If I see something sticking to the paper, I do want to be careful that I don't pull too hard, because if you tear this letter, then there's going to be a line or a hole cut. And any place there's a hole, you're going to get the wrong color paint. So just be gentle with it. You can always back your paper. You're backing up a little bit until you get it right. Notice sometimes I actually stick myself to it just a little bit. I like to use this particular stencil material because it actually sticks to your project a little better, and that's actually the blue material that you're seeing. It is the quality that you might use when you're masking out a part of a car or something that you're wanting to paint. Not that most of you probably have experience painting automobiles, but that is typically what it's used for. But my Silhouette machine seems to like it, and I seem to love it, so I've kind of grown used to using it for a lot of my stencil projects. Just a couple more letters here, but I want to make sure I get them right. The benefit of having one really long stencil instead of having each of these letters on a separate stencil is that they stay in line, and I don't get kind of crazy with my spacing. I did these all on my Silhouette, so everything is perfectly in alignment, and it is going to work out well. So now you can see that I have removed the backing from this entire stencil.
And again, this is about a 60-inch piece of stenciling. And all I'm going to do is pick it up on one side and flip it over. Now it's slightly forgiving at this point because I haven't rubbed it down really hard, so I can adjust it. I want to get my S pretty close to the bottom. I want to kind of eyeball it up. I've got my Christmas trees I know I want to put at the bottom, so I've got to leave enough room for that. And then it wouldn't be Christmas without Mary, so I want to make sure that I can get my word Mary in at the top, so I'll kind of eyeball that here in just a second. Looks like I've got my S in a pretty good place. And then I'm going to just put my Mary up here, and that all seems like that will work out well too. So I'm not applying Mary at this second. I'm just going to get these letters on here first, making sure that I'm loving that it's down the middle. And then next I'm just going to start working from the center out and smooth this clear transfer tape onto my board. And in the process, I'm sticking down these blue letters. Now it may feel a little repetitive, but what I'm going to do again is I'm going to go back through and I'm going to burnish these letters again. This time the purpose of the burnishing is to get them to stick to my wood. So I'm going to pause the video while I'm doing that, and I'll pick up in just a second. Okay, it doesn't look much different, but while I paused the video, I went back through and I just made sure that I had burnished all of these letters. I'm going to hold the camera up a little bit and just let you see how the design looks going down. And while I'm still in this process, I'm going to move the camera up a little bit and show you what I am doing here with the word Mary. Now, it also needs to be removed from this backing. So here's the backing. Here's the sticky tape. So burnish it. This one will go a lot faster because it's just a smaller stencil. And again, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to start pulling the backing off, pushing down anything that wants to come with me. Now when I make these stencils, and you buy the ones I've already made, they've been already weeded, which means if the E has a little hole in the center, I pulled out that little part, so everything is great. So just keep working through this. The little curlies sometimes want to be just a little pesky, but they add so much to the design that I like to use them. And you could, hand letter this sign. What I really like, though, is how professional the lettering looks when you've used stencils. If you've ever done a sign by hand, you may have gotten Christmas on there almost to the bottom and realized, oh no, I can't get the S. So I'm doing the same thing here. I just placed it. I actually think I'm going to move it up just a little bit because I want to make sure there's room for that little row of Christmas trees. And that should fit nicely right in there. But again, I won't be doing those until after we've painted with the red paint. All right, so that is good. I'm going to move the camera back down. There's a bottle there. Sorry for that. And what I'm going to start to do now is remove this piece of sticky tape. And what I'm aiming for are these letters to stay on this board. So if you see, I'm again using a method where I'm moving across. I'm not pulling the paper straight up and down. That helped. The straight up and down would actually make your letters come loose a little bit. And we want to make sure that they're really, really good and tight so that we block or protect this area that we've already painted white, and we've got it working good for us. And I'm just going to go all the way down. These letters are sticking really well. If you have just painted your board, you want to make sure it is thoroughly dry. Any kind of vinyl or stencil material does not like to stick to wet paint, even if it's just kind of damp. And so I generally will put a fan on it for a few minutes just to make sure. Now my C wanted to act up a little bit there, so I'm going to very carefully pull it off. Try not to stretch it, and it just fell right in place like I needed it to. Just going to move this big piece of sticky out of the way before I trip on that. So now I've got these letters all exposed. And the last piece, I'm going to move the camera up again, is to expose the stencil of Mary. So very much the same way. I'm just going to pull that across my design, making sure I'm not picking up anything. Pretty much the same things that gave you a little trouble when removing the backing. You'll notice it wants to do the same thing on this. So I have gotten that cleared off too. So now I definitely want to burnish the edges of these letters. I know that seems like an overkill, but if you want crisp lines, making these extra steps of rubbing and burnishing, they really do, they're worth the little bit of extra time it takes you. If you get any air bubbles in there, make sure they're smoothed out so you don't have any paint places where red paint could possibly leak up in there. And just really focus on the edges of the letters, rubbing them nicely. No shortcuts here. You just really need to go around the whole letter. And although it does seem like a lot of extra work, if you've ever tried to letter something by hand, this is nothing compared to that when you're trying to just use a paintbrush and draw it or freehand it. So I'm going to keep getting all those nice and solid there. And notice I haven't put my Christmas trees down yet because I'm going to go back. I'd like to have my Christmas trees add just a little another color to it. So I'm actually going to stencil those on in green. I absolutely love Christmas colors and bright things around my house for the holidays. So anytime I can paint for Christmas, I am a happy camper. All right, so I have completely burnished these letters. I'm going to pause the video and we're going to move on to the next step.